Hello, this is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barnes. Today we're going to be talking about this Biden story with the documents, which you touched on a little bit yesterday. But it's starting to get pretty ridiculous, especially the lengths that people are willing to go to try to say how it's different or how Trump was bad, Biden's not bad. And there's even conspiracy theories floating around from some people in the Democrat Party and even in the media about Republicans doing some kind of plant job or to make Biden look bad. But it's pretty wackadoodle, but there is a big difference between Biden and Trump's situation, and we will talk about that. Also, on I think it was Wednesday, there was a vote to about giving care to infants or newborns who survived an abortion, and Democrats in the House were like, "No, we're not supporting that." So they had the most ridiculous speeches, and I feel like it's important to go through some of the commentary surrounding that by some members of the House, including Hakeem Jeffries, who's a moron. They might as well have gotten someone from the squad. I mean, he's radical and just ridiculous. I mean, Nancy Pelosi would say some off the wall things, but I think she'd say off the wall things just kind of out of dishonesty. I think sometimes you say off the wall things because you're just a liar. But I think he's like genuinely an off the wall person. And he's not all I think he's just a radical who's just not all there. So I want to play his stuff, but also a clip from the media regarding the vote and some propaganda that they said during their segment when they accused the right of engaging in propaganda. So a lot to get through today, though. I think we're just going to really touch on these two topics, but there's a lot of content, at least in the very least. So before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on the website, different articles, different videos. I just dropped we talked about it the other day. I did drop an article about Byron Donalds and Joy Reid and her lie about critical race theory. If you're on my email list, you just got an email about that. So check out that stuff. Please check out different videos that I have. Check out different merch that's at the store. It's a good way to support. You guys can check out different stuff and buy something for yourself or buy something from someone else. If you do like what I do here at blacktnews.com, please consider leaving a donation at the website at blacktnews.com/donate. It costs to stream, costs to run my website, costs to, when I do fancier videos, it costs to use the software that I use and templates and all that good stuff. When the music's super, super good, I licensed it from somewhere. Though I do have, family that's pretty good in making music, but everybody's busy, So if you can support, I very much appreciate everyone who can do that and has done that. And if you can't do that or you want to support another way, you can, like, subscribe, follow, tag other people and encourage them to watch Black Tea News. And I do appreciate new subscribers, and I do appreciate people who, help to get the word out. That all does really help. But I do want to encourage you folks. I plan on attending March for Life next week. And I last year I did have sponsorship opportunities, and I had some people who took me up on the offer. And if anyone would like to do that, there are sponsorship opportunities available. Here's a little photo of me, at the march last year. So it was not as cold as it could have been. So I appreciated that. It's a bit warm right now in Michigan for it being the wintertime, but there's a whole week, so maybe there's going to be galactic snowstorm. But either way, I'll be there. So my goal is to go there. Perhaps you guys have seen like the compilation video that I put out there of footage from the event and talking to some people, and I did a voiceover. I'm talking about how encouraging it was. So if you debate people on these issues all the time, your heart kind of does start to get heavy, just from the misinformation, the ridiculous logic, the callousness of different individuals, and just the sometimes just pure selfishness. Sometimes it's just stubbornness of the mind. It just whatever it is, sometimes stuff can just absolutely weigh on you. And so it was so encouraging going there myself and seeing so many other people, especially young people. People always like, oh, they see me like, oh, I'm so, hopeful for the youth. I'm not as young as you think I am. So, I'm 33. I don't know if you guys think I look young or not, but most people do. So it was encouraging to me to see a lot of people my age and younger who were so passionate about life and who are also so factually informed on it, and had good arguments and a lot of compelling reasons to why they were pro-life and fighting for the unborn. So I really enjoyed it. I'm going to have some help there with me as well, so I can get a lot more done. So if you would like to support and be a sponsor, there's different opportunities and you'll get like a credit like on the website, in different posts, and you can have different individual posts for your organization or your business. If you want to, you can do it as an individual, you can do it as a nonprofit, you can do it as a company, whatever floats your boat for whatever sponsorship you want to do. I had individuals who donated before, or sponsored before, and I had organizations that had donated before. If you're a candidate running for something, party leadership or youth chair or something like that, if you want to donate, you can do that as well. And also in the higher packages, you will get like credits on the videos that are put out. So different interviews that we put out, and as well as, like a big compilation sort of video that we'll make as well. Smaller videos will be on like TikTok. I'll try to have quite a few that are like a minute long that'll, be different reels, and longer videos will be like on Facebook and YouTube. So if you would like to support in that way, you can go to blacktnews.com, and there's a sponsorship button at the top, and it'll say March for Life 2023. And you can go ahead and read through the sponsorship opportunities and select one and make a payment. And if I need to get any information from you, like any different links you want, images, etc., when we say our big thank yous to our sponsors and get your logos and stuff, we'll get into contact with you. So I appreciate everyone who helped last time, and I appreciate anyone who's willing to do it this time. And I want to get compelling stories, and I want to be able to, I believe I'm very good at least telling a compelling story. So help me out. Help me meet the goal. So if you can, again, there's sponsorship opportunities. And if you would like to give more, if you would like to give less, but just give something that you can, you can just go to the website, and I appreciate that as well. If you would like to remain anonymous, there are people who gave last time who's like, you don't have to give me anything. And I was like, okay. So those opportunities are available as well. So go to the website, and if you'd like to sponsor the March for Life trip and the videos and stuff that we're going to put out, that opportunity is available for you. So yeah, God bless you if you do that. Anyway, let's get to the meat of the day with the different stories. So I always start off with a meme, or at least I try to most times. So This one comes from a Right to Bear Memes. So they had, where it all started: Apple, Google, Amazon, Harley, Disney, and then you got Biden 2024 on the garage with the Corvette. So I think everyone pretty much just knows in general that Biden has had documents, classified documents that have been found. Like his lawyers are like, oh, we found these and we're so responsible and we immediately alerted authorities, and no one believes that. But the question is, because they did know that he had classified documents prior to the midterms, so they didn't alert the media and people before the midterms, probably hoping to not have that in the news. I think they're very obviously intentional about that stuff, but they didn't find it in one location, not even just two locations, but there was a third location, and the third one that they reported was the garage. So that's the conversation surrounding the garage and the nonchalant kind of attitude from Biden and stuff about it is just really remarkable.
Okay. Classified material next to your Corvette. What were you thinking?
I'm going to get a chance to speak on all this, God willing, soon. But as I said earlier this week, people, and by the way, my Corvette's in a locked garage. Okay, so it's not like you're sitting out in the street.
It's not like it's sitting out in the street. So I had posted on Facebook. I said, "Who keeps their their classified documents in a garage?" And someone's like, "Doesn't everybody?" And they're like, "But you don't do it." And they're being sarcastic. And I said, "I don't have a Corvette to guard it, so why would I?" And everybody, I guess, thought that was funny. But no, I do not have a Corvette to guard my classified documents like Biden does. So there's a lot of concerns here in general about who had access to that stuff, which the White House isn't going to. They're not going to release any kind of information on who has visited the house in these different places and had access to that stuff, in which the White House was asked, but they're very aggressive about it. So there's two clips that I got from our White House press secretary, who's so great at her job, which that was obvious sarcasm. Even Jen Psaki was a lot better than who they have now. But she said in one of the clips, she's like, Biden takes this very seriously. And in another, she gets into it with Ducey because he wants to know, are they going to be able to know who had access to the garage? And she doesn't want to say. So we take things very seriously.
So number one, and I've said this multiple times already, we take this very seriously. The president takes this very seriously. He was not aware that the records were there. He does not know what is in the documents. Again, classified information, classified documents, he takes very seriously.
No, he doesn't. At least not seriously enough, which, by the way, he had some choice words about Trump and how irresponsible he was with the handling of his documents. And people were going crazy as the story was exploding with Trump, alleging that he had nuclear codes and all kind of stuff and was gonna sell them to our enemies. And there's when Biden had that interview with the media asking what did you think when you saw those documents just on the ground? And I'm just like, these clowns, why, if that was highly classified stuff in there, which some of the stuff was just marked classified and they were empty boxes and stuff, but if you're going to have files that are so sensitive, why would you take a photo of them on the floor to put it out, to leak to the media or put it out to the media so everyone can be so, about them being all over the place? It's so manufactured, so now it comes out that Biden has these documents at least in 3 different places, and one of them being in his home, which I'll play her response, her back and forth with Ducey before I drop the bomb, I guess.
When will the White House release a log of visitors to the Wilmington house?
Peter, you've asked this question, or your colleagues have asked this question before. Let's not forget what we did here in this White House. We instituted something that the last administration got rid of, which is putting out the White House, making sure that there was a White House log, extensive White House log, so the American people got to see.
House where there is potentially unsecured classified material.
Again, I am telling you, we did something that the last administration got rid of, which is instituting the White House logs. Did you ask the last administration why they got rid of the White House logs? Okay, let's go. Let's go. Well, did Fox did? Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
If you can dodge a question, you can dodge a ball. What does that have to do? What does that have to do with anything? Like, just answer the question, yes or no. Come on. So according to some documents, Biden, as in Hunter Biden, claimed to own the house that has the Corvette in it. So I'm assuming he had access to it if that's the case. Also, someone went back to like a Jay Leno interview with Biden in like 2016, talked about how Hunter, as a present to Joe, they like put in a new engine in the Corvette. So that he obviously has had access to the garage. So there lies a problem, and Hunter Biden is a very compromised individual. So there's no act of being careful in this. Obviously, they hid some information so it wouldn't get out to change the midterms or people's feelings about it, which I don't think something like that would have. But really, but I mean, who knows? But it's a problem. It's a problem that the media is so one-sided on this matter when they take sides and they explode things to create such outrage, and then they want to downplay something and they're trying to downplay it like, well, Biden having these documents is it wrong, or is it so bad? And when he discovered them, they turned them over. So the issues that Trump didn't cooperate, which isn't true. Trump did cooperate. Now, I'm not going to say that the man wasn't combative, because if he said that, I wouldn't believe it. It's not in his nature. But I mean, they knew where the documents were because he was, in conversation with the National Archives, and he's like, well, they told us to put on a lock or bigger lock or something, so we got a bigger lock. And then they did the whole Ray Mar-a-Lago and stuff. So people are trying to say that I don't know, the Trump situation is still worse than Biden, and Biden, what's going on with him isn't a big deal. But there is like a huge difference between the two of them, between Trump and Biden. Do you know what the difference is? And I mean, at the time when Trump took those documents versus when Biden took those documents. Is it obvious? Donald Trump was the president. Biden was not the president and hadn't been the president and didn't have just like declassification powers like that. So the statute of mishandling like classified documents, it seems pretty clear that if they just wanted to go by the reading of it, that Biden has mishandled documents. And there have been people who didn't mean to in a way, or didn't seem like they did something maliciously with mishandling documents and still got charged in some kind of way. So for Biden, I mean, he's the president, they're not going to do anything to, but as his actions as the vice president, did he do something inappropriate? Yeah. And Hillary Clinton mishandled classified materials as well, but they read into the statute differently. And they're just like, what they did was bad, but it's not good. We're not going to let it rise to the occasion of when we need to like arrest her or something. And of course, I'm paraphrasing the situation, but they totally let her off. Nothing is going to happen to Biden. He's not going to be prosecuted. There's a special counsel looking to it. But I don't get your hopes up on anything. If you thought this is going to be a thing that they take him down or take an opportunity to take them both down. Now, if there was like some kind of huge conspiracy to be like, well, Trump, we don't like Trump and we don't like Biden and Biden is bad and we want new people and we're going to take them both out, I guess that would be the best kind of conspiracy against them both. But I don't foresee that happening. I don't foresee that happening, and I don't see how they can indict Trump and not indict Biden, because Trump was the president. Trump was the president. So Why he had these documents, I don't know. Who's all had access to them, we don't know. I doubt we will learn. I doubt we will learn. But the hoops that folks are trying to jump through, like people are making graphs like Trump did this, Biden did this, the difference is this, the difference is this. And I'm like looking at the Democrat leftist sort of propaganda trying to salvage Biden on this. And I'm like, oh, why didn't you mention that Trump was president at the time and Biden was not? It seems like a pretty big difference as far as like the powers to declassify stuff. So anyway, here's a conspiracy from, unfortunately, an elected official.
My response to it all is that alleged classified documents showing up allegedly in the possession of Joseph Biden. I mean, there's so much that needs to be investigated, and that's what I call for, is for everything to be investigated. But I'm suspicious of the timing of it. I'm also aware of the fact that things can be planted on people. Places and things can be planted, or things can be planted in places and then discovered conveniently. That may be what has occurred here. I'm not ruling that out, but I'm open in terms of the investigation needs to be investigated.
So Biden's lawyers like turned it in. So as far as like some kind of conspiracy that someone planted it so Biden, could get in trouble or something, obviously that's not what's going on. Sunny from The View said that too, like threw that out there. But she's a bonehead, so it is what it is. He is correct that the timing is suspicious. The timing is suspicious. I don't think they're just like, oh, well, golly gee, here's some documents, or something that prompted the search and everything to come forward. Obviously, the timing is suspicious from when we learned about it, as in after the midterm, and not before, when it was kind of known that they had done something inappropriate, but the public and the media and stuff didn't find out till recently. So yeah, the timing is suspicious for sure, absolutely. And I'm sure there's a reason to why now, or what prompted to kind of set this all off, but it's not some kind of Republican mastermind for sure. Absolutely not. And as far as like, if anyone thinks the deep state is getting rid of Joe, I don't know about that, because they have a really bad bench and they don't really have anyone better in their sights right now to run for president. I think there's other people who have aspirations for it. I think Gavin Newsom obviously has aspirations for it. I don't know how people like across the country could go for that though. I think a lot of places don't want America to be like California. So I don't think that would really go anywhere. Kamala Harris is awful. Pete Buttigieg can't even do the job that he has. And, he's more interested in, sort of social justice than doing a very good job at his job, which he probably thought was going to be a cushy job to set him up for his next kind of political stunt. But he's very trash at his job. So I don't think they have a good bench. And there's always the possibility that someone like Michelle Obama could come in and then that would get a lot of energy and support from people. But who knows? I don't think they would run Michelle unless they were pretty confident that she would win. I just can't see them like kind of stepping away from all the stuff that they're doing at Netflix and other places and, getting money and power and prestige outside of not being president and then come in at the possibility to possibly lose. So I think they wouldn't jump in unless they thought it was a sure thing. And I don't necessarily think they're ready to throw Biden under the bus. at this moment. If the midterms were really bad for them, maybe. So there's also a conspiracy that this was all kind of uncovered to give a cover so they can't now indict Trump because they can't indict Biden. And even though people want Trump to be indicted, they like won't be able to really do it now and be consistent. And this is the deep state's way of keeping Trump out of jail or anything, so he can be the nominee because he's the one that they want because they think Biden can beat him. So there's all sorts of provoking thoughts, but maybe there is no greater conspiracy other than Biden knew that he had this stuff as people are continuously looking into him, that maybe they feared that stuff might be discovered, and they knew there was a big deal with Trump, and there's a council looking into Trump, and so they decided to just go ahead and be like, yeah, we got him. Because at the end of the day, what does Biden have to lose by exposing the fact that he has these classified documents? I think he's someone who legitimately believes that there will be no repercussions for his actions. And we've talked about this before, and like people journaling or detailing sort of his mindset, particularly like with Afghanistan. Politico reported was Holbrook who wrote in a diary talking about when he was VP and he wanted to like pull out of Afghanistan and stuff. And like, well, if you just pull out, what about like women, who would be like tortured or oppressed by the Taliban and stuff, and like that kind of blowback. And he's just like, we got away with it at Vietnam. So in other words, it doesn't, not like the moral repercussions of it. He just kind of blew past it. Just we're not going to be held accountable by the public, so we can do what we want to do. So I think much of Biden's mentality is that I can do what I want because at the end of the day, I will be on top and no one will punish me. That the public has very short memories, that the Democrats will get in line. They will follow the pecking order and he's not going down. So I think at the end of the day, he knew that he probably had them. It was a big thing with Trump. So he decided to just go ahead and out that he had them. And there will be the special counsel for him, and there's one for Trump. But he doesn't expect it to go anywhere. He doesn't expect it to damage him. It is what it is, and he's probably looking forward to a rematch with Trump, not a fight with DeSantis or somebody. And it could just be that, but who knows? Just spitting my thoughts out. So let's move on. So the Republicans, one of the first things that they did was introduce an act to protect babies who survive abortions. So there have been questions to whether or not something like this would be necessary, because in 2002 there was an act that was passed and with some bipartisan support to protect newborns when they're born after an abortion, but it wasn't like fully sufficient. So what that did in the past was that it made it so that it recognized that people who are, exit out of the womb, that they are persons. So this particular bill would require that you grant medical care to the babies who survive the abortion, and that you take them to a hospital and stuff and give them medical care. So there's some wild responses to this. I'm kind of like, which one should I start with first? Let's start with the elf himself, Nadler.
The problem with this bill is not that it makes anything, that it is not that it provides any new protections for infants. The problem with this bill is that it endangers some infants by stating that that infant must immediately be brought to the hospital, where, depending on the circumstances, that may be the right thing to do for the health and survival of that infant, or it may not. That is the problem with this bill. It directs and mandates a certain medical care which may not be appropriate, which may be endanger the life of an infant in certain circumstances. That's why we oppose this bill.
So you might be thinking, what the heck do they care about this infant? They are totally for that mother planning to have killed that baby. So again, it does offer new protections that was not there before, to mandate that you care for the infant, and if you don't, that there be penalties. Could it be in a scenario where it's hard to get an infant to the hospital or something? If the Democrats could have, and maybe they should have just kind of like called their bluff and just been like, okay, we'll have an amendment to make it a little clearer. My thinking though is and I guess I know that people go to clinics when people are very far along to have abortions, but I'm like, why go to a clinic in a situation when because there's different complications that can arise. I had a friend who had a very traumatic, like, later term abortion, and I do mean it was traumatic. And these aren't like simple people obviously do it all the time, but they don't happen without complications. There could be some kind of harm to the woman. Women could die and have died in abortions. So I'm just like, you're that far along, why don't you like make sure you're in some kind of close vicinity to a hospital, or go to a hospital that's willing to do that or have that kind of care. But yeah, there's women who definitely go to those places late term to do that. So yeah, get the baby to a hospital, especially if there's a chance that the baby will survive. You don't want to let it, what are your other like options? Were you just gonna let it cry on the table? Which there was a big conversation about this when Northam, with Governor Northam, because there was a bill that I think that required them to give care or something, or maybe it was gonna allow them to abortion up into the moment past birth or something. There's a controversial bill. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it sparked a conversation about giving care to children if they survive. So he was on a radio show explaining, in a situation, you talk where the baby lives, you would talk to the parents and see like what they wanted to happen, and you'd make the infant comfortable. Like, so they're basically saying, if the baby lives and if the parents intended for them to die, then you would make them comfortable and just let, I don't know, cry themselves to sleep, or just let them not try to save their life. And you might be asking, why would people do that? And people would do that to further protect a woman's sort of mentality for the abortion. When Obama was in the Senate in Illinois, there was a question about saving babies or giving them medical care, and he voted present, if I'm not mistaken, on it. And so he had commentary surrounding, and he even like spoke out against the bill. And so the reasoning, if I could just paraphrase, is what was, if it's to give them care, fine, but he thinks it's really about trying to change mindsets around abortion, and they're concerned that it could they're going to alter a woman's decision if that's a thing that people are going to do, that if they live, that they're going to try to make them live, help them live. So they don't want there to be any sort of mental obstruction from a woman deciding to ultimately abort her child. So even if the baby makes it out alive, and like, you can't even be like survival of the fittest, like you deserve to be here. you survive the procedure, like, here's like $1 million and start at least on life or something like you won the game show, like you survived the test of the trial. You don't want to do something like that. It's like, oh bro, we gotta finish you off. So it's really grotesque that's where we're at. And they're trying very hard to make an argument where this bill is just bad because they care so much about the baby. So that's what's kind of so jarring about these speeches, and they have the nerve to do that when they could just be like, well, we feel that there's some issue here, so let's amend it and make it better. But they're just like, no, we cannot. We got to find a reason to not support this bill. So here's Jeffries talking about the bill.
And then on Wednesday, they made it clear they're going to do everything possible to impose a nationwide ban on abortion, detonate reproductive freedom, criminalize abortion care, and impose government-mandated pregnancies on the American people. That's what their legislation yesterday was all about. That's this week in extreme MAGA Republican land. It's quite unfortunate. We remain committed to trying to find common ground to solve problems that the American people care about. We also remain committed to a woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions. That's a big difference between House Democrats and the extreme MAGA Republican agenda.
So by the way, he thinks that we're in a cult. Pro-life people are in a cult. And if you're pro-life, you're extremist. We went through like a whole thing with Jeffries earlier this week, maybe, or maybe it was last week. But so he thinks we're in a cult. They are not mandating pregnancy. That's not what the bill was. How could you even say that? How could you even read it like that? How can you even assert that? That is so absurd and crazy. They are not mandating pregnancies. That would be weird. I'd be against that. I'd absolutely be against that. They're not mandating pregnancies. Saying you can't kill a baby is not the same thing as mandating a pregnancy. The government, did they hold you down, get a turkey baster and insert you or something? That's not what's happening. That's not what's in the bill. When people say, oh, they're forcing women to carry their baby. Like the government could not do anything after you got pregnant and you'd have that baby. It's coming out of you one way or another. You're either going to give birth to a dead baby or an alive. It's coming through you one way or another. Abortion is forced birth just to a dead baby. So when people use that sort of aggressive language to paint like pro-life people as the aggressors, when they themselves are using force to unalive them, it's just really bizarre, really crazy. But that's their language. It's so many people use that language. I really try to dismantle like the silliness of that when I have conversations with people. But yeah, the whole force thing is crazy. But saying that they're mandating pregnancies, again, I would not be for that. I wouldn't be for that. I'd agree with them. Americans are not for that. But that's not what the bill was. That's not what the bill was. And by the way, to use these euphemisms like reproductive freedom, like the baby, like reproduction has already happened. That's why there's a baby there, you know? So it's just anything to kind of get away from the fact that of what they do, what it is. Like I said, I think this guy is just an extreme moron. They could have gotten someone from the squad to be the speaker. I mean, he's just so absurd. And Nancy would say some off the wall stuff too. But this is nutty. That was nutty and just untrue. Okay. I'm going to move on to my next clip. This is a new Congresswoman out of Michigan. She beat John Gibbs in West Michigan. John Gibbs beat Peter Meyer in the primary. And Peter Meyer is one of the Republicans that voted in favor of impeachment of Trump. And so he's always gotten flack from people in Michigan for that decision. And I guess he knew that it was, a good chance that he could be going down and lose his political career over that, but he did what he did. And the Democrats actually funded commercials in favor of Gibbs during the primaries which because Gibbs was someone that Trump selected, and which raised a bunch of ethical questions, because Peter Meyer would be like, these Democrats call me the good Republican because I, voted to impeach, and they find me reasonable or whatever, and then they go ahead and fund people to run against me. Now the commercials, and I played them on the show at the time, but the commercials would be like, John Gibbs is too extreme for West Michigan. He believes in patriotism. So it would be stuff like that. So if you are a Republican and you haven't heard of Gibbs because he didn't have as much money or isn't an incumbent or whatever, and you see a commercial and you're like, that sounds pretty good. He believes in patriotism, and different stuff like that would sound good to someone on the right, but they'd phrase it as if it's supposed to be a bad thing, but it's obviously not a bad thing. So they did that with multiple candidates, but they did it with Gibbs, and Gibbs ended up beating Peter Meyer. And so he ran, and West Michigan, they redid our lines, and so it was there are some areas in West Michigan that could be, blue, but how they redid the lines, they really did need someone who was kind of more moderate. I would prefer if we could convert more people to our opinions, but you got to do that in your off season, not like during the height of the election. But you don't have the time to make all those converts. So he didn't end up winning the election. A lot of people just got, overrun during that time. So this is the person who beat him. And she's going to say some remarkable things. I'm going to have a ton of comments, so let's watch.
Of parental and maternal rights, and in opposition to H.R. 26. I'm the first mother in history to represent West Michigan in Congress. This matter is deeply personal to me. I recently shared publicly about my own experience navigating a complex miscarriage and the loss of my daughter. As a pro-choice Christian who chose life, this issue is so personal to me. My faith informs my actions, but it doesn't dictate the policy of an entire nation. And further, when I read the scripture, I turn to passages and I'm guided by passages like Jeremiah 1 verses 5, which states, I knew you before I formed you and I placed you in your mother's womb. It doesn't say the government's womb or the speaker's womb. It says the mother's womb. I believe life is precious, but I reject the idea that if I embrace the sanctity of life, I also must be forced to invite the federal government in to regulate it. We must protect families from unnecessary government intrusion into the most sacred and personal decisions of our lives and our children's lives. Thank you.
Gentlelady's right.
So pro-life Christian. Have you guys seen The Princess Bride? I don't think you know what that word means. So I have a lot of commentary regarding the subject. I've had some viral videos talking about pro-choice Christians and calling them out and saying you cannot be a Bible-believing Christian. And well, I guess you can say that, but really challenging if you're a Bible-believing Christian. There should be no reason why you should identify as pro-choice. I've written many articles, but you guys know that I have this book coming out. Of course, God is blatantly against abortion. And I have that passage in this book for sure that she quoted. But it was the worst theological take on that possibly. It was like Pete Buttigieg, like bad as far as like disrupting, interpreting the scriptures and stuff. So yes, I knew you in your mother's womb. And it's the mother's womb and not the government's womb. But since God did that, and God has that relationship with that child, it's not about inserting some kind of ownership of the mother. It's about the intimacy with God and that newborn, God and that unborn child. God and you as an individual, that God has a relationship with you and knitted you in your mother's womb. That's what that's about. That's not about saying, well, since you're in your mother's womb, she gets to decide the power of life and death. There's no sort of scripture in the Bible that gives a woman a blanket authority to decide the power of life and death. You know what the scripture also says? Thou shalt not kill. That's what it also says. So when you look at the passages, why not that one? I don't know how you could look at that passage and get something so twisted. It's so crazy. It's so absolutely bonkers. Out of all the time, I've debated this topic and talked to people and heard people twist scriptures. I've never heard someone say something so blatantly out of the box, crazy pants on fire. With one of, and I'm sure she did on purpose because it's one of the most pro-life scriptures that people use. I'm sure it was on purpose. I'm sure it was to tweak people. I'm sure it was to say, I'm going to take this one and twist you. I'm sure it was for that because that was a special form of contrived nonsense with that passage. Just absolutely wow. Absolutely wow. So, to the point of being in the mother's womb and all that stuff. Again, God never gives any sort of blanket authority to do that. But as far as the government being involved and regulating and stuff, what it says in the Declaration of Independence is that the reason why we form governments is so they can secure certain unalienable rights. And she's a congressperson. I wonder if she's ever read it. So I'm going to assume, and I'm going to assume she knows what those certain unalienable rights are. Like life. So there's that. So if it is alive, and it must be alive because if she's read the scriptures and she's a Christian and she believes in the Bible and she knows the Lord and all that stuff, she at least knows that John the Baptist reacted to the Holy Spirit and the New Testament. Right? So there's that. So she knows it's alive. Scientifically, it's alive if you don't want to go by the scripture. So if it's a life, why aren't we protecting that life? Why isn't it not getting equal protection? People are saying it's government interference. It's the government's job to ensure our liberties. That's what it is. And I'll admit it's a conflict of rights for sure between the mother and her autonomy, her body, and the baby. But we have conflicting sort of situations all the time. And your bodily autonomy does not grant you the power to just kill people. It doesn't. It doesn't. So you could say, well, I have the right to do with whatever I want with my body. But that doesn't explain why the government should allow you to go to a hitman to use instruments or drugs or whatever to kill a different person, and why the government should not penalize or prosecute that hitman that does the job. That doesn't explain that. So people talk about like it's not the government's place to do that. I don't see how you can really make that argument. I don't see how you make that argument. I know people make it time. I know people on the right make that argument too. Or some people on the right, but that's really when she's saying the government shouldn't be involved in protecting life. She's violating the purpose of actual government. So she's a bad Christian. She's a bad elected official. She's just not good at her job. Absolutely not good at her job. Absolutely not good at her job. And, as I was reflecting on this conversation and her speech, I was thinking about Solomon, the story of King Solomon. He was, so wise, etc. So there's a story, a very famous story, with two women, and they both had babies, and one of the women's babies died. So they went before Solomon. And they're both saying, this baby is mine. So Solomon was like, okay, let's get a sword and we're going to split this baby in half. And then one of the women was like, okay, because her attitude was like, if I can't have this baby, then she can't have this baby. Nobody gets the baby. Nobody gets the baby. And then the other woman was like, no, she can have the baby, because she was like, I would rather this child live and me not have the baby than to see it die. So because of the woman who was like, just give the baby up, who's willing to save the baby's life, Solomon was like, okay, you get custody of the baby because obviously you're the one with the mother's heart. So for people who say that they are pro-choice Christians and saying or people who are saying that I would choose life for me, but I wouldn't, but everyone else gets to decide and take the life of someone else if that's what they deem, that's what they want. That's what the vibe that gives me, that story. That it's okay if it's if I don't really have a mother's heart, like, okay, it's like as if it's a possession and not someone with inherent value. We all have inherent value, and I understand that it just in general our relation to each other changes how our relationships to each other are. Like, you obviously care about people who are your family more than you care about someone else, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have like the bare minimum of recognizing their humanity and saying that they should not be killed. So if you have a whatever, let them die attitude, that's messed up. That's messed up. So I think the biggest problem with our country surrounding this issue is really apathy and people not caring. I mean, and it does get exhausting, I guess, talking about this all the time. And some people just talk about it because they think it's fun, or just talk about it because it get clicks. It certainly gets clicks on TikTok and stuff. But I think as far as valuing each other's lives and valuing life, you have to take a principled stance, and you have to care. Like I let it be known, especially in my book, and as I talk about this topic, that when God tells us to love your neighbor, that's a commandment. And if it was easy to do, it wouldn't need to be a commandment. It's not always natural to love the person next to you, to love the person that you're not necessarily thinking about, to pray for, people who bother you, to pray for those in leadership and in authority. All that's not always an easy thing to do. It's not always natural in the forefront of our minds. We get busy and we're selfish things. We care about the things that we care about. That doesn't mean that we should not take some kind of stance and say, you know what? Everyone's life human life is intrinsically valuable. Life itself is intrinsically valuable. And we should, at the bare minimum, fight for people to have the right for life, which is a right to not be killed. So, the people saying that they're pro-choice Christians, like, I'm a coming for you for sure, for real. Last video that I want to get through, and I think this one's pretty important, is this news reporter, and I think they're with NBC, if I'm not mistaken. But they had a lot of misinformation to go through. Yes, Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale, Capitol Hill correspondent for NBC News. So there's just going to be misinformation after misinformation after misinformation with this lady.
In reproductive rights advocacy groups say that they're surprised that Republicans aren't necessarily starting with an outright full national ban on abortion. It's something that we heard floated by people like Lindsey Graham at the 15-week mark just before the midterm elections. So
I hate it when Lindsey Graham did that. That was so strategically stupid. But they called it a 15-week ban, but it would technically be a 15-week abortion allowance. So if you want to find a way to make both sides of the aisle not like it, I suppose that's a compromise you're looking for, because most abortions do happen earlier, I guess, than the 15 weeks. So there's still a lot of time for people to have abortion. So people on the left should really be so for that. They should have jumped on Lindsey Graham's proposal, but they can't, because first of all, babies that get bigger, their bodies sell for more money. But they believe in the ideology of a woman being able to decide to abort throughout all 9 months of pregnancy, and they'll counter with like women don't do it that late, but the point still remains, because they still won't make legislation that says, well, you can't do it past month 8, because they still believe that women should have the option to abort as late as absolutely possible, because if you solely believe that it's a woman's choice and her bodily autonomy, there's only there's only 2 consistent positions for like on the abortion matter. There's a bunch of compromise in between, but there's only 2 consistent positions. Like, one, when does life begin, and you protect it at that point of time when it's a life, and then the other position is it's a woman's choice. She should be able to kill it up at any point. Those are the only 2 really consistent positions on the matter. So they really should have jumped on Lindsay's 15-week thing. And I didn't like it. I didn't support it. I didn't appreciate it. But the Democrats were, oh, this is terrible. This is that they want to do a ban. And again, it wouldn't just be a ban. It would be a federal allowance up to that point to abort. But they wanted people to be able to do it as long as possible. So, and there's already been radical abortion bills and changes to the Constitution in Michigan. We had the Reproductive Freedom for All Act, which is bigger than abortion, but it makes it so that you can technically have an abortion up until the moment of birth. So that's the route they're going with. That's what Governor Whitmer and Stacey Abrams and Beto O'Rourke and a lot of other Democrats believe in, and that they're pushing. Haley Stevens, that they believe it. They don't want to say, they won't say, but they won't, condemn or put a limit on it. So that's where they're at. So let's keep watching.
Something that Kevin McCarthy has spoken favorably about. So certainly that's one of the things that we'll be looking to in the future, since it's not where they're starting. But where they're starting is also important as they do things like seeking to protect crisis pregnancy centers. Which,
by the way, I don't think the Democrats are there to really support that. But the big Republican base, they would not be happy with that 15 weeks either. There'd probably be a big chunk of Americans who'd be like, yeah, 15 does sound good, but that would tick off both people on both sides from the opposite ends of the spectrum. But let's keep watching.
Are notorious for disinformation about abortion and pregnancy, and then also starting sort of at the.
Okay, that's what I want to talk about for a bit before we go on. So she mentioned pregnancy crisis centers, like they thought that they would, or they're doing bills or whatever to protect pregnancy crisis centers, which have been attacked since, there've been terrorist attacks. I mean, they're doing acts of terror for political gain. So it'd be terrorist attacks on these pregnancy crisis centers, doing vandalism and burning some stuff down and other stuff since, the leak of the Dobbs decision, which the DOJ and folks just don't seem to care too much about. They're going hard after pregnancy crisis centers. I guess not as hard as they can yet, but there have been people who have been pro-life who have been arrested, by the way, for just being, outside protesting and whatever. There's a woman in the UK who was arrested for praying. She was just standing there praying, like, well, why are you doing it here? And they're like, are you praying? And she's like, I might be praying in my head. And like, okay, well, you got to go. They arrested her. It was very wild. But anyway, they're gunning for pregnancy crisis centers because they don't want women to not have abortions. They say it's about a woman's choice, but they want women to choose abortion, and they don't want you giving them some kind of moral conundrum to make them not go through with that choice. And they don't want you to, if they're deciding to do, they don't want you to make them feel bad. And my thing is, even if abortion has to be necessary, let's go with that for a second. It should not be option A. It should not be option B. It should be all the way like at option Z. So shouldn't we as a society at least do what we can to try to convince a woman to not do that? So to me, it seems like a good and moral society that would allow this evil, at least if it's a necessary evil, what we would do at least is try to persuade and help women to use other options. They don't want that. So they talk about pregnancy crisis centers. So in Michigan, the legislature put money into the budget to promote like adoption over abortion, and they also wanted some money to go to pregnancy crisis centers. Governor Gretchen Whitmer used her veto line power to defund that stuff, and her spokesperson said, we're not going to fund these places because they do misinformation. I don't know what they mean by misinformation. That's what they say, but what do they mean? I don't know, because like there's one in Ann Arbor, I think it's Ann Arbor, excuse me, that says right on their website that they don't offer abortion. And they have OBGYNs on staff. So what is it specifically that they think that these places are lying about when it comes to abortion? Keith Ellison put out like some kind of consumer alert report about pregnancy crisis centers. You had Elizabeth Warren, who said that they're going to come for these pregnancy crisis centers, and she doesn't like the fact that they outnumber abortion clinics 3-1, where she's from. That's disturbing. So they have such hatred for these places that offers information to these women in crisis, but also can give diapers and care and help to women as well. How much care they might give someone ranges from how funded they are, etc. So we should be like helping to uplift and create more places like this, but they don't want them to exist. And so they call it misinformation because because they're lying. Because they don't want people to be armed with information to be like, oh, my baby looks like that. It's this developed. It can, they don't want people to know that sort of information. So they have been working like overtime to try to get their own misinformation out. So for example, you hear a lot of conversation about ectopic pregnancies during the whole Roe v. Wade overturning, et cetera, period up into the election, and I'm sure further beyond. Planned Parenthood itself used to say on their website that an ectopic pregnancy and treating that is not the same as having an abortion. They used to have that on their website. The people pointed that out too much, I guess, and it was too good of a talking point to rise fear up in women. So they actually changed their website. They changed their website. They changed their website with something else as well. But they keep changing definitions of stuff, wording of stuff. It used to be like if you just Googled fetus, the definition would be a human unborn baby or something. And it was that for the longest time, because I would always be a little surprised when I Googled it and that was the first thing that popped up. It's not the first thing that pops up. I still have the screenshots though. And I have the screenshots of the Planned Parenthood and the ectopic pregnancies thing, but they don't want you to be informed, and they want you to be misinformed about certain things. I was talking to somebody about there was a legislator from Michigan that gave a speech. They had this whole big thing about women who've had abortions, people they know, et cetera. And so one of them gave a testimony about how they had an ectopic pregnancy. And I was talking to somebody who I know who had a few ectopic pregnancies, and I didn't know. And when I told them that the left is using ectopic pregnancies to push abortion, and they're saying it's the same as an abortion, she's like, these people are sick. It's not the same thing. You can't help that. So she was furious. She was so disgusted that they would compare those two and put them together. But they want to use cases like that to make it so sympathetic to people to be like, well, women really, really need abortion, when the truth is that they want the option available for birth control, to be like a second option for any reason really. But a lot of women use it for birth control. Let's just be legit. Let's be for real. And people get upset when you mention that. And then they'll be like, no, I didn't use it for birth control. There was a really viral TikTok video where someone was like, had an abortion, and the first part of her TikTok went viral because she's like, and you pro-lifers don't know how terrible it is, so I'm going to tell people so they have information. And everyone's just like, no, we know how bad it is. That's why we try to warn people. Like, no, we're not ignorant. Like, you were ignorant. And if you had listened, you would have known. But she's still pro-choice. And so she explained why she did it. And she also said in the original video that she was angry when people say that people use it as birth control, and that's not true. And then another video, she mentioned that she didn't have the finances to take care of the baby. You use it as birth control. You didn't feel that you were able to take care of the baby, so you use it as birth control. If you're not using it for some kind of triage, like life situation, like some kind of medical, unforeseeable thing, and it's I can't deal with the baby, I don't want a baby right now, like the timing's not good for you, or you just don't want that's using as birth control. It's your backup birth control. That's what we mean. That's what we mean by it. So a lot of people use it for birth control. That can upset you, but it's just true. I'm not saying that people don't have really intense issues that lead them to that decision. I'm not saying that it's an easy decision. I'm just saying it's one that you didn't have to technically make. So they use ectopic pregnancies. They use miscarriages a lot. Like, if people who have miscarriages and they do some kind of the procedure to clean out their insides and stuff, they're like, why I had an abortion? It's like, the baby was dead already. And you're gonna like compare it to an abortion. Now, if you have a miscarriage, it's a spontaneous abortion. Technically, that's what it's called. But we're not concerned about spontaneous abortions. We're concerned about the deliberate induced ones. That's the one that we're like marching against and all that stuff. So they're using these medical situations of women that a lot more women can relate to shield the fact that they just want it to be available for any circumstance or any reason, as long as a woman says, I want to have an abortion. So there's just a ton of misinformation. And if you post a video on abortion now on TikTok, or you post an abortion now on YouTube, there's some kind of disclaimer. And there's probably not one now. Maybe I've said it enough that if you're watching on YouTube that you'll see a disclaimer right now. But I'm going to clip this and post this later. So if you're watching it back, you can probably look and see that there's likely some kind of tag. Like when you would talk about COVID, there'd be some kind of tag or something that would relate you back to NIH, or the NIH, I think it is, the organization, to talk about like vaccines and COVID and other stuff, to give information. It's going to have something about abortion, and it's going to define abortion as terminating a pregnancy. And you know what? There's people who get on TikTok lives and stuff and only discuss abortion as ending a pregnancy, and they'll even pretend like it's just ending a pregnancy period, as if you had a C-section, then that would be an abortion. And I'm like, well, that's ridiculous. And if you press them, I think they'll drop it from that point. But they really just try to define it like an abortion is an umbrella of you just ending your pregnancy. And I'm like, how do you end the pregnancy? So there's so much misinformation, but they try to say that the pro-lifers are the ones bringing misinformation. There was a super viral video, post, an article that was saying, here's a picture of a fetus at 9 weeks. This is what everyone's freaking out about. And you can't see a fetus, all you see is tissue, because it's like an exploded tissue. It's a fetus that's been sucked up through an abortion. Like, if you're sucked up through a tube that's smaller than you are, like, what do you think is going to happen to your body? It's not going to look like a baby body. So people start doing TikToks on it and like, see, they were lying to you the whole time. And even pro-choice women were like, dude, I had a miscarriage. You can see the baby like visibly at 9 weeks. Like, that's not what it looks like. And there was a medical student who went on Michael Knowles's show or whatever to have a debate with him. And she brought out that picture of that exploded fetus to be like, I'm going to show your audience the truth. And he's like, what is that? She's like, this is a fetus. And in a petri dish. And he's like, how to get in the petri dish. I loved how he just probed her. But she was so serious, like, I have to show the audience the truth. And I'm like, how can you come up with that propaganda and say such a terrible thing and do such a terrible stunt and then spend like the majority of the time appealing to science and the fact that she's a medical professional and he's not a medical professional. Well, I guess that means that you know how to manipulate people the best as far as the medical misinformation that you're spreading. So I just think it's rich that she's talking about, she mentions pregnancy crisis centers and just throws out that narrative that they're notorious for misinformation. I don't hear a lot of specifics when people say that. And they might mean something like, well, they say that our heartbeat, you can hear it at 6 weeks or detect it. And it's like, yes, there's a heartbeat. And then they'll be like, no, it's not. And they'll get into all these like technical, ninjutsu sort of definitions to try to like ignore the fact that yes, if you pick up a medical textbook, it will tell you that the heart has begun developing and all that pointed before. So but they don't want women to know how developed a baby is at that point of time when they go in to get a sonogram, etc. So that's why they say it's misinformation. It's huge projection. But let's continue on with this.
Fringe side of the abortion conversation, focusing on late-term abortions. They're calling this a born alive bill, but really what they're talking about is fetuses who are viable after a period of gestation, so really 21 to 24 weeks and after that. And at the center of this conversation is the fact that that's around 1% of abortions in this country, and really abortions that happen at...
So she'll continue talking, but I just want to put this out there. There's about 1 million abortions a year in the United States of America. About 1 million. Okay. And of course, there's going to be places where there's less of those now because they have more abortion restrictions. But unfortunately, there's places where they're basically trying to be an abortion sanctuary. So if we have about 1 million abortions a year, and there's like 1% of them that happen past like 21 weeks, where a baby is possibly viable and can survive an abortion. Which, by the way, there could be instances where maybe the baby could survive earlier, not survive outside the womb, but there could be babies that that actually survive the abortion and then they end up dying because they're not viable at that point. So that's grotesque and scary to think about just in general. But if the baby can possibly survive in these late term abortions when they're like 21 weeks and above, and by the grace of God they missed the executioner, didn't quite get them, and then they survive. She's saying that these babies in this period of time who would be aborted, it's only like 1% of abortions. So that's still a lot of babies. We're still talking about like thousands of babies. Go look up unarmed, what was that, 2020, when everyone was marching in the streets. Go look up the number of unarmed Black men killed by police and think about all the property damage and that occurred that year, all the protesting, all the social justice, all the money that was donated, all the outrage during that time for that year. And tell me, is that anywhere close to the amount of babies who are aborted late term? I'm not saying those things are quite this, they're not the same. But I'm saying I want you to weigh your perspective on moral outrage, because I don't think a lot of people think about the fact that there's like about 1 million abortions a year. And even if 1% of them, like, granted, most abortions are done before that time. That does not mean that that's still not a lot of babies that are killed at that point brutally. So, and just FYI, I do want to also put it out there that just because people do those procedures, there's 1% of those abortions that happen, doesn't mean that people don't like dismember babies and stuff before that. Because I looked into the Michigan numbers, and so there's like 30,074 abortions in 2001. And even though like I think there was only like a couple hundred that happened after 21 weeks, but there was still about 14,000 dismemberment type of abortions through like suction and like tearing off the limbs and stuff like that. So not everyone gets the abortion pill method. So babies are still being like dismembered and stuff, even though they're not happening at a point where they could possibly be viable. So I just want to throw that out there. That's not really relevant to the conversation of people being able to survive, but I just think that's an interesting thing to think about. So she's also injecting so much narrative in this like conversation. It's ridiculous. You think she was on, I guess she is on MSNBC. You know, she was an ABC correspondent, but yeah, she's on MSNBC. So I guess that explains a little bit more why she's like injecting so much narrative into and putting all these stipulations into her conversation. So yeah, I mean, life starts at conception. I don't like abortion at any point of time. But yeah, still thousands of babies dying at that point of time, if it's just 1% of like a million. So there we go.
At that point are because there are fetal abnormalities or the life of the mother is in danger. And so by starting here in this place, it's really looking for, in many ways, almost a way of talking to a problem that exists in such a small and rare way in this country. But again, this is where Republicans are. And it makes sense why people like Nancy Mace are saying they're out of step, because the rest of the country, the majority, says that they support abortion in all or most cases. Minnie, this is
So, that's false. There's a lot of false there in the last segment of that playing. So, the majority of the country does not believe in abortion for like any reason up to any point. That's just not true. You know, sometime after the Dobbs decision, the Harvard poll did some kind of poll. I think it was Harvard, looking at Americans' feelings on abortion, and most people kind of are where Lindsey Graham is at, that they don't really want it past 15 weeks. It's what she's talking about, like no limitations, basically. That's like 10%, and I still think 10% is egregious and high, but that's definitely not the whole country, majority of the country. Certainly not. So she's just absolutely wrong on that. But she said she did say for people who choose late-term abortions that mostly they do it for fetal abnormalities. So that is also not true. So there have been different studies, and even the Washington Post that covered this before, that women who choose like late-term abortion, women choose late-term abortion for similar reasons that they choose to have abortions earlier. They might do it for, and by the way, if you believe in, I think viability is actually a really stupid argument. And I won't get into all of it today, but I do have an article on blacktnews.com that talks about it a little bit. So you can go ahead and check that out later. I don't want to get too derailed because we're already like going long today. But they, you know, if a woman has, if you say it's justifiable that a woman can have an abortion because a relationship didn't work out at the beginning or whatever, and she has it at 6 weeks, how can you say that she can't do that at 22 weeks, you know, or 25 weeks? If it's okay for her to have an abortion at 6 weeks because she can't financially afford to take care of a baby, when she loses her job at 25 weeks or gets kicked out of the house or something, how can you say that she shouldn't be able to have an abortion at that point in time? So just think about it, like really think about it. Like people's circumstances can change dramatically in that amount of time. So, you know, some people just mull it over. The friend that I said that had an abortion later, she just was mulling it over. She was trying to decide. She's having trouble kind of just fessing up to her mom, and her mom wasn't happy when she told her, but her mom let it be her decision, and so she decided to have an abortion. And she had an abortion because she thought it would be a blank slate, and what she had was trauma. So people have it for different reasons. So just to believe that it's at fetal abnormality, when fetal abnormality is a very, very small, like something medical is a very, very small number of overall reasons why women have abortions anyway. And when they say fetal abnormality, they might not necessarily mean, oh, my child will not live past the womb. Like that's not what these people mean. They could mean, we did a test and the child has Down syndrome. So that's eugenics. So I know a lot of people don't want to think that women would do that late and have reasons other than something that is extraordinarily heartbreaking, but there is data that is even in different studies that followed women for their reasons. And there was one situation where a woman, she didn't have the money to get an abortion or something early on, and then she got some kind of work bonus, and she's like, oh, I'm gonna go have that abortion now. So it's just not true that people primarily do it for some kind of medical emergency for the woman, which at that point in time it takes multiple days to have abortion if it's late. So the fastest way to help the woman would be to induce the labor. But it's not always about fetal something's wrong with the fetus and their quality of life as far as they're not going to live. So why carry it a couple more weeks? And by the way, some of those tests can be really wrong as well. And I don't want to get too far down in that conversation today, but it's just not true. So she start off talking about how pregnancy crisis centers have so much misinformation, and then she goes on to do all this propaganda and misinformation herself. So I just thought it was important to highlight the absurdity of these people and the dogma. She's a news reporter, darn it. A news reporter. I mean, I'm a political commentator. She's not a commentator. She's a correspondent. She is the Capitol Hill correspondent for NBC News and MSNBC. So I guess the embassy really, really explains it, but just misinformation after misinformation, and they'll keep spreading it. And I think if we're not careful, hopefully Republicans do a good job trying to look through these social media companies and government interference on free speech and stuff. But I think we could possibly get to a point where they want to censor information on abortion like they censored information on COVID. I'm concerned about that happening. And I think they're trying to build up that case that pro-lifers lie or just spreading misinformation. And they have different means and access of social media. Like I already mentioned, there will be different posts and kind of censor things like learn more about abortion, and they will just describe it as ending a pregnancy. So Planned Parenthood, in their literature and stuff, they used to be very open about abortion kills the baby. They used to be very, very open about that. But of course, if we were upfront about what it was, it would not have this vast support that it does today. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Very soon, you'll be able to at least pre-order the Kindle copy of my book. Of course, God is blatantly against abortion. I'm just trying to find the photo so I can show you guys the cover again. There you go. So it deals with theology, of course, but also science and philosophy and rights and other stuff like that. But definitely it's going to be a good read. My baby sister actually did the artwork there for the hand of God reaching out to the baby hand. So she did a fabulous job. I really, really appreciate her. She's going to come with me to the March for Life. So if you see us, you can compliment her on the fantastic job that she did, and also say hello. So again, if you would like to help sponsor that trip, there were sponsorship opportunities last year. If you'd like to sponsor going, and then you could get credits on videos that we put out and different, shout outs on social media, and also shout outs on the show, like one week, not the following week when it's over, but the week after that, I'm gonna do like a full week of like putting snippets of stuff in it in the lives. And so I'll do shout out to the sponsors and popping up logos and different stuff like that. So if you can sponsor as an individual or business, except now if some of y'all got like some kind of crazy thing going on that would not jive with the brand, please don't apply. But I won't take your money if you're like I don't know, a weird depraved kind of thing. But if you would like to support and you think we'd work well together, you can go to blacktnews.com. There's a sponsorship link, and you can click on that, and there's a drop down and take you to March for Life 2023, and you can look at the sponsorship opportunities and go ahead and apply for that. So I thank anyone who's willing to do that. I was very thankful to the people who did it last year. It does, help the show, and obviously being able to travel and do more stuff. And I really thought it was therapeutic to be there just in general. But I do want to capture people's stories and inform people, but also let people know the convictions of people, why they're pro-life. And people try to say it's just men just want to control women's bodies and women are pick-me's and all this kind of garbage. So I want to continue to tell a compelling story of, we want to love women and we want to love the child, and we can help them both. So that's what I want to do. And if you would like to support in that endeavor, God bless you. Please go to blacktnews.com and check out the sponsorship link and consider helping me get to where I need to go. So you can also check out different merch that we have on the website, like the pro-choice men are sus, which is suspect. I'll go into all that at a different time. Of the Constitution is a Glorious Liberty document with Frederick Douglass. We got I am not the victim you're looking for. All kinds of goodies on the website. Make sure that you guys are liking, following, subscribing, hitting the notification bells wherever you're watching Black Teen News. That you go to the website, drop it in your email so you can get different notifications and emails when we send out emails. If you're on the list today, you should have got something today. If you didn't, check your spam, and please take me out of your spam. And but I did send something out today, so should got something. Just FYI. So check if you don't know, if you don't have anything. And if you really didn't get anything, go ahead and resubmit your email on the website. Make sure you guys are telling other people to watch Black Teen News, and I will see you guys on Monday.